I was hitting it too, but I think you got it. We're here. We did it.
We're recording.
Um,
Okay.
we're recording. We're jumping right back into creating a plan. We did not finish yet. No one missed anything. Before we hop back into the presentation, did anyone have any other questions about creating a plan or holding space in a group setting? Okay. Tara, do you want to share screen share or shall I?
Would you screen share again? Okay, beautiful. So creating a plan in a one-on-one setting. This is one of my favorite things that I get to do when I get to work with people one-on-one. So we touched base on a little bit of this morning. Um, when we're creating a plan in a one-on-one setting with an individual client, um, my biggest recommendation is taking time to converse with your client so you have a clear idea of their expectations for your time together. If I'm doing a first session with someone, usually if we haven't conversed through email where I get a good idea of what they're looking for, will take usually the first 10 or so minutes to talk about what does your yoga practice look like? What are you hoping to gain from these sessions? Is there anything we're working with? Tightness in the hips and the hamstrings? Are you working with something in particular? So just having a clear idea. I try not to just jump in and be like, all right, let's go for it, because I want it to be, where we both have a clear understanding and clear idea what we're working with. So that's a huge thing for me. And then, like we mentioned earlier, checking in with your student throughout the course of practice to make sure they're seen, heard, and supported. Especially, I always refer to this, one of my regulars that um, we've been working together on a very regular basis since the beginning of COVID. And she's the one who comes to me with a lot of joint pain. And some days she feels so great, and other days not so great. So just consistently checking in. Also asking your student, hey, do you want me to practice with you? Would you like me to watch what you're doing and give feedback? Kind of creating expectation around that also. So this client in particular, she always wants to practice together, so the two of us are both moving at the same time, and we'll be moving, and then I'll say, how does this feel in your body? How are your hips feeling today? Do you have enough support in the low back? Yes, I feel great. Okay, and then we keep going. So that's just been, just having it be conversational. And my main thing that I always come back to is, do you feel seen? Do you feel heard? Do you feel supported? um, Julia, can we go to the next slide and see what we have coming up? Okay, perfect. This is beautiful. So, especially if your client has difficulty moving in and out of postures, a way to have compassionate sequencing can look like setting up the base in one posture and then finding multiple movements while keeping their base stable. So, this picture in particular, it's like what I think of in my mind as like the goddess base, because it's what goddess pose typically looks like. So, it's a wider base, you're feeling the stretch in the inner thigh. Um, and we're nice and solid. And instead of being like, okay, we're going to do one thing here, and then we're going to do two other things, and then we're going to hustle you back to this pose, let's try to take care of multiple things in one base. So we have like the traditional goddess squat, and maybe we're here in goddess, we sweep the arms up and over, we pull the hands through heart center, similar to what we did this morning. Maybe you take that a few times, and then you move on from there. Again, similar to some of the things we did this morning, lifting up onto the ball of the heel. And in this way, we're pumping the calf. So Michelle always says this has been one of my biggest like physical yoga therapy um, takeaways, among many things. But we have one pump in our body, and that's our heart. And so when we're pumping the calves, when we're pointing and flexing the toes, especially, side note, we wake up in the morning, if you're one of those people with lower blood pressure, maybe pointing and flexing your toes before you get out of bed, because you're helping your heart, you're helping to assist, and you're pumping the blood up and through your body. So the specific client I work with that I keep in mind for a lot of my stuff, um, we point and flex a lot, and it's for her toes, it's for the arch of her foot, but it's also to help pump blood through her body. So coming up onto the toes and coming back down. We did this earlier. Imagine you're holding the sun or a beach ball and you go to one side and then the other. You're working into the side body. Maybe you feel the obliques turn on. Um, and then that nice shoulder stretch, dropping one shoulder and then the other. Also, you're here in this goddess base. You can take open turn to the left, open turn to the right. Maybe you do cactus the arms. There's a lot of different things that we can add with this goddess base. So that's something to keep in mind, Julia. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, darn it. I already gave this one away because I gave a couple of examples, but that's okay. So I wanted to take a minute for practical application. Imagine you set up your student in a seated goddess pose. It really resonates. They love the stretch. Maybe they spend a lot of time sitting at a desk or sitting in a regular seat and their knees are together. And it just feels great to open everything up. They feel it in the outer hip, inner thigh. We go through a couple of movements and they want to stay in this position and they want to keep going. What are some other options we can add? And this is an opportunity to pop it in the chat or to just unmute yourself like we did before. What other options can you see with the goddess squat as the base? What would you add on to that? Lisa.
I was just wondering a question. Would you add maybe light weights for some people if they're seated, but maybe they want to work their arms a little bit more? Would you consider adding light weights?
I think that's really nice. Even soup cans, if you don't have weights handy, but
right.
Weights are, and maybe arms are out and you do some gentle arm circles or you do your lifting and lowering.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking like a 1 or 2 pound, obviously not, lifting a 15-pound barbell in each hand and going at it.
Yes, I think that's great. Alicia.
I'm thinking neck stretches. When you put your arms down on your shoulder, on your thighs or your knees, and then you kind of do these neck stretches.
Yes. I think that's nice, and especially if that's a nice base for them. Same thing, you can shoulder roll also. You can shoulder roll it. I saw one pop up. Lily said cactus arms and then upper body twist. I think that's really fun too. Sierra, you have a hand up.
Okay, I can't think of the name of it. I was going to put it in the chat, but when you hook your arms behind your back.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah.
Samukasana, cow face pose.
Yes, that's it.
I think that's awesome. That's a good one. And then Drew, you have a hand up.
Drew, you're muted.
Okay, well, I'll say it again then. Seated cat cow.
Oh yeah,
cat
you
cow.
Cat cow with wide base. I think that's really nice. Okay, so Matt says in the chat that he found a my goodness, yoga teacher on YouTube that practices compassionate sequences. That's really fun. I'm glad you put that in there. The link. Thank you for that. And then moving from side to side, trying to touch the floor, the fingers of the floor with fingers of hands. Yeah, I think that's great. You can do inhale, arms high, exhale, lower down, and take that variation on forward fold. And then inching the fingertips over to the left, inching the fingertips over to the right. This is like eagle arms, simple breath work. Oh, this is awesome. This is more than I would have
put in the chat, Gyan Mudra. And Erin, I am so grateful you put Mudra in the chat because that was like, Tara and I were putting this together and I was like, we both just wanted to keep adding slides, right? And I was like, I want to do a whole section on mudras. And then we were like, wait a minute, we need to reel it in. So Erin, if you're open to it, do you want to hop on and just show Gyan Mudra real quick? Maybe we'll bring some mudra into practice tomorrow, but I would just, if you feel like it, no pressure.
No pressure, of course. No, it's
hi.
I'm right here. It's just connecting your pointer finger and your thumb and then the last 3 fingers. And you could place it like, well, I'm not really in a spot to do, but if you're in, you could place it on your thighs, or you could also, here, and then you squeeze the back muscles and you got it.
Love it. Mudras, circuits, seals, just another way that you can bring bring the experience of yoga into the practice. So this is such a powerful way to re-channel the energy of our own bodies in, around, and through ourselves. So thank you for sharing that. You're so appreciated. Drew, were you next? Who's next? Whose hand? Got
No,
Drew and Sierra.
Scared. I think we're all good. So, Alicia, I see what you're mentioning in the chat, and it's, my goodness, we're talking closed captions. So, Frankie, can we keep an eye on that? Because sometimes closed captions say funky things.
We sure can.
Okay. If there's anything we can do to kind of write that course in the chat, let's absolutely do.
Yeah, thanks for calling that out. Thanks, Alicia. Sierra, did you have
And then
another?
others go haywire and
No, I didn't. I just didn't lower my hand from earlier.
Gotcha. Awesome. Such good suggestions, y'all. Should we hop back in, T?
Yeah. Beautiful. Oh, I love this one also. We ran out of time. This morning, 30-minute chair sequence passes so quickly. So another really fun one, chair supported warrior. And this is nice. So, I've shared about this previously when I did body positivity lecture a little while ago. I had a sister and she suffers with bipolar, and she'd gone through a good period of time where she wasn't regularly leaving her apartment, and she lost a lot of her strength. And so one of the things that she was open to, she did a lot of like walking in place to regain strength. Like she'd hold on to countertop or the back of a chair and just walk and begin to like regain strength, taking short walks. But another thing she did was a lot of supported stretching. And this was before I'd gone through teacher training and really had like good resources to provide her with. But this is the kind of thing, like a supported chair. You have someone who's trying to regain strength. We could also put my client, the one, it was the bad reaction to antibiotics, and she lost a lot of her strength and had a lot of pain and inflammation. Oh my gosh, you put someone in a supported chair doing a warrior pose, how powerful and how empowered that you feel. In that pose, you feel so strong, expanding across the chest, but then the base of the pose is supported. And so you're able to be supported, you're able to build strength, but you're also able to move and just be clearing things out, connecting your breath with your movement. So another way to compassionately sequence, let's say we're in a supported chair pose, we're holding our warrior two. Maybe we take some movement. We inhale, reverse our warrior, exhale, come back through center. And we take this a couple of times, stretching through the side body. And then maybe from there, we take a version of extended side angle. So chair supported warrior, dipping it back and reversing, coming forward, extended side angle, and then coming back through center, scooching it over to the other side, doing the same thing in a different way. Anything else that we can think of in a supported warrior two besides?
Sarah, you actually have a request. Can you walk us through cues to get into a chair warrior?
Yes. Oh, I don't have my correct chair here. That's okay. We can make it work. We might have to stop the screen share. Okay. So I would say,
Spotlighted, Donna Summer.
thank you. I would say come to a comfortable, let's adjust this.
Volume stop over.
Come to a comfortable seat. And then let's say we're starting on the right side. Heel toe the right foot out so that the right knee is facing towards the right. And then heel toe the left leg out. If it works and they can step it back, that's great. Otherwise, for me in the situations I've worked with, take it slow. Heel toe, heel toe, heel toe. Maybe this is as far as we go. Maybe there's a pretty generous bend in the knee, or maybe we keep going a little bit further. Left leg is nice and strong. We have our nice bend in our right knee, and then expand across the chest. Feel the long line of energy. And take a few breaths here. This feels really good. And then we can flip and reverse. Breathe into the right side body. Feel the long line of energy. Create space. Then come through center. Extended side angle. Left arm goes up and over my little spine, just pop, pop, pop. And this feels so nice too. You're reaching, you're expanding. You come back to center. And then maybe you bring the hands back to heart center and you can heel toe the left foot in, or hey, you can pull the left leg in, heel toe the right leg in, take it on the opposite side. And just also keeping in mind, if this is something you're doing with someone, one side could look completely different from the other side. You know, not one is better than the other. Maybe you have more opening or more strength in one side of the body. But again, same thing. And then while I'm here, let's, do we have anything else that y'all would think of to add with our Warrior 2 base? Julia, if anyone raises a hand or if
Yeah, so we had the suggestion to bend the elbow and tricep and stretch into peaceful warrior.
help me out here.
Inhale, reverse. And then bend the elbow and the tricep. So Erin, would she lower her hand overhead down towards the back of her head?
Oh.
So front arm, right? Tip over, bend top arm, and then backhand.
Oh.
We're going for, because I have hands.
And now you're in humble
For
warrior.
Gomukhasana.
Yeah.
You could do surrender, right?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
What is?
Where you are now. You're surrendering humble warrior. Then you can inhale up and then maybe shoulder rotations, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
The mobility going.
Yes, this is great.
Even alternate.
Yes. This is me in the morning, first thing in the morning. I'm doing my shoulder rolls when I'm waiting for my coffee to get warm.
It kind of mimics the goddess, right?
Yes, and the humble warrior is so nice because my belly is compressing along the top of the left leg. And you know, we're compressing the low belly organs, stimulates digestion, helps to compress, and then when we come back through center, fresh oxygenated blood is moving through. So maybe we hold here in a couple of breaths. And hey, if this is a lot, or maybe we don't feel super steady, there's can be blocks handy. And you can lean forward and take that humble version, having supportive block or bolster, and then rising up back through center.
Yeah, now do your Bikram triangle. No, not triangle, Bikram. Keep them bent.
Inhale your arms wide.
Tip over, bent knee.
And rotate.
And then
Nope, other way.
Other way.
Leg, arm on the inside.
Yeah.
Bikram triangle.
Took me a long time to get there, but this is amazing. Yes. Yep, and then elbow is on the inside of like the inner left leg. There's nice opening in the inner thigh.
Press it open, press it wide, press back, press in.
Press, rotate.
Open, close, yes.
Thank you for your patience with me. That's wonderful. I love it. Okay, any other ones we want to add in here?
Maybe adding dynamic movement when you're in Warrior 2, just flip the palms up to the ceiling and then raise, inhale up. Inhale both arms up over the head into H position. Palms facing each other, straight arms. Palms facing each other, and then exhale, flip the palms back facing the earth or your mat. And then raise up and just repeat. Inhaling and exhaling.
That's nice too, and I'm imagining in the morning, like maybe I'm imagining, like for myself when I do visualization with stuff, but like I'm pulling energy up with me. Allowing the breath, inhale, filling all the way up. That's really nice, and that's, you know, I feel that in the arms after you do that a couple of times.
You could also add palm rotations on different levels.
Oh, so like this kind of palm rotation?
Like palm, like open hand, palm up, palm down. Rotation of the forearms. I mean, rotating from the elbow.
Like this?
Just, I mean, like straight out with the hand and then palm to the ceiling, palm to the floor.
Oh, like holding a plate, dropping a plate.
Yes.
We would sometimes do this one too, where you're like in Warrior 2 and you take your hand to the shoulder and you make a stop sign with the one hand and draw back like bow and arrow.
Yes.
Real strong and powerful. Other way though. So if your right leg is forward, right hand to left shoulder, pull and engage the back like an archer.
Oh, I love that.
And then you come back and you go to peaceful.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's so great. I love when people share because so many things that I don't think of come up. Like it's just different perspectives. I love it. Okay, so Drew says using your muscles to sort of split squat on and off the chair. Absolutely, that would be an option too. Okay, let's get back into our share.
It's everyone's favorite time. Woohoo!
Awesome. Okay, wait, before we go into this, Julia, let's chat. I have a couple other things I want to touch base on that I think are important. So a big thing that comes up, and I feel like this question comes through a lot of times, like we'll get this call at the studio or students who come in that haven't practiced before. My mom and I have had this conversation, that my private client, one of my very dear ones, her and I have this conversation where my Nana and I have this conversation where it's like, oh, I want to do yoga, but I don't think I can do a 60-minute practice. And so one of the conversations I feel like I'm having on a regular basis, and I imagine it might end up coming up for some of y'all, especially working in a one-on-one setting, it's you don't have to do a 60-minute practice. And so one of the big things I've worked on with a client in particular, with my Nana, with my mom, break it up into small practices during the day. Like, yes, we'll have our time together. Maybe we spend 60 minutes together and we put in the work, but when you're doing yoga on your own, it doesn't have to be, like an all or nothing type mentality. Maybe you wake up in the morning and you point and flex your toes before you get out of bed. You extend your arms long, you hug your knees in tight. Maybe you take a little supine twist on one side or the other before you even get out of your bed. And so that can be a huge thing. If you're putting these little pockets of yoga, a couple poses here and there, maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes at a time, putting together these little sequences. You're bringing, mobility, you're bringing movement, you're connecting to your breath during different aspects of your day. So same thing, even if you're working from home, you're working at a desk, taking time. So for about a decade, I worked in the dental setting. I worked in a dental office as an assistant and insurance coordinator. And I would take time. When patients wouldn't be coming in, I'd push my little rolling chair back from my desk and I would just twist and I'd lift my arms and my coworkers would laugh at me and be like, "What are you doing?" I'm moving. I'm finding gentle movement during parts of my day. So that's been with one of my clients in particular. She feels like she gets really hard on herself and it's an all or nothing mentality. And so that's what we keep coming back to is, are there different times in your day that you can insert little pieces of yoga and you can do a couple of poses and you can do a forward fold or, you're waiting for your coffee to brew. Can you hold on to the counter and send your hips up and back, take a little downward dog variation? So that's been a really fun thing to kind of play with for myself, but then also with a good handful of students and clients. You don't have to do this whole practice. You don't have to roll out your mat and take all this time, just coming back to your breath and coming back to little movements throughout the day. So that was something that I definitely wanted to touch base on. And then Julia, whenever you're ready, we can pull up our journaling prompt. Yes, someone said in the chat, even just coming back to breath, that's true. I have a moment or two between clients or between, activities or Zoom calls. Let me take time and just take a few deep breaths, filling all the way up and then let it all go. It's a nice way to reset. So taking time just to touch base and reflect. You're welcome to journal this. You're welcome to share in the chat. And if anyone wants to raise a hand, you're welcome to. Why is adaptive sequencing an important tool to have in our teaching toolkit? And then in a public class, what might indicate a student? Oh, how did I mess this up? In a public class, what might indicate a student could benefit from an adaptation, modification, or option? How would you introduce it? I just read it wrong. And then the third one, what questions might you ask in a one-on-one to determine the best right adaptations? That's a great one. So take a moment or two and then begin to throw some hands up when you're ready.
Tara, I just realized something. Should it be adaptation and not adaptation, or does it matter? Can they be used interchangeably?
Adaptation. I believe so. I think that's interchangeable. Sarah A says adaptation. Oh, yeah, Mandy says in the chat, it's an important tool to be inclusive to everybody. I agree with that. Because then we're just helping to further perpetuate that yoga is for everybody. It should be accessible to all. And by knowing, that people can grab a block or a strap, or what they can do to lessen sensation, or just checking in and being in touch with their body, that's helping yoga to be accessible for all. 7 Kelly, we all have different bodies, yes. Emily says to ensure people don't injure themselves. Yes, you're helping people not to push too hard or to go too deep when it may not be the time for that. So Kay says, did anyone get the notes for after check-in on the first slide of create a plan? Julia, if we need to go back to that, we absolutely can, and we can touch base on that. Jeremy says, recognizing that everyone is in a different place, injuries, body types, or even just desire may change, and it's okay to adapt anytime. That's absolutely accurate and correct. So Ginny says, how can you incorporate adaptive ideology into caring for yourself as a teacher prior to a full day? Oh, Ginny, that's a great question. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I will answer, and then I'll let Julia take that one as well. Okay, so you said prior to a full day. Usually I do my stuff at the end of the day. I come home and I'll come home, I'll get my dinner ready, or I'll take stuff out to do dinner. But before I do anything, I'll come into my room, and I always do a couple of like yin style, but not quite as long as yin. So I take time to reset and take care of myself. And a lot of times it's supported child's pose. And I have the bolster, I'll do wide knees and take a full good couple of deep breaths and just release the day, let it go. So just wide knee child's pose supported with a bolster, that's a big one. I have this beautiful window in my room. A lot of times I'll throw my legs up on the window and do like a window supported legs up the wall. And then from there, I scooch onto one side and I'll do supine twist one side, supine twist another. So a lot of times, like if I've been moving and grooving during the day and it's been a busy day, I always bring movement into the end of the day. And a lot of times it's adaptive, and it's more of like a compassionate, careful type, caring type lens. Nice, like supported forward fold, having a chair handy, that kind of thing. Ginny, that's a great question. Julia, do you have anything to add to that? Because I know you're a morning practicer, right?
Thanks, Tara. Yeah, great question, Ginny. I'm like an all-day practicer. I'm a weirdo, but the way I adapt for myself, Ginny, and the way I set myself up for success is I've moved away from like a morning routine, and now I have like my morning has 3 phases, like phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Phase 1 is time for like gentle mobility, stretching, connecting with self, journaling, coming into a supported shape, sometimes in bed, sometimes on my mat. It just kind of depends, like really, really being gentle and taking time to like wake myself up like, oh, good morning, you. Oh, thank you, body, for giving me a good night's sleep, like drinking water, like really just nourishing myself. By the time I move into phase 2, I'm like, okay, what type of movement do I need? So I know that phase 2 is going to be an opportunity to move or to reacclimate in my body. Some days that looks like a restorative practice. Some days that looks like seated meditation for 5 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour. I don't know. Like for me, incorporating adaptive ideology literally means meeting myself where I am and giving myself exactly what I need without putting any expectation on what the outcome is. By the time I reach phase 3, I'm like ready to connect with other people. And like, I know that my energy is in a place where I can meet people where they are and not project my own stuff onto whatever it is that I have the pleasure of experiencing throughout my day. To be completely honest, like there was a couple of mornings ago, I had not such a great experience first thing in the morning. So Tara will think this is so funny. I took some really, really loud, intense, deep breaths. I started clapping and walking around my house. Sometimes making noise is a good way for me to like let out anything that I'm feeling or experiencing in my body. And once I was all clapped out, I went for a run. And then I came home and I just laid in Shavasana for 20 minutes. You know, like, was that my plan for my morning? Absolutely not. But based on circumstance, that was the best right thing for me in the moment. So if we're thinking about incorporating adaptive ideology into caring for ourselves, man, do that self check-in. Like, how am I emotionally? How am I spiritually? How am I intellectually? How am I physically in my body? If your physical body doesn't want to go for a 5 a.m. morning run, heavens to Betsy, don't make yourself. Go have a bath. Go do something else. Does that help, Jenny? Does that?
Jenny says yes. Okay, so we now have a joke at the studio because of Julia. And so Michelle and I both do this when we need a reset, and we will stomp and we will clap our hands and we'll say, okay, okay, okay. And we're hyping ourselves up. And it's because of Julia. We took that page from her book. And so everyone do it. Like, honestly, I highly encourage next time, like something is not going your way, you're not feeling it, stomp around and say okay and hype yourself up, because you will feel much better after. Laura Austin, I see you have a hand up.
I just dance.
Yeah.
I just go, Alexa, put some happy music or something, and then I start dancing. And then my coffee is ready, and then just kind of check it out, you know, even in the night. Dancing is kind of like my medicine, and it makes you feel so happy.
Dancing is a really good one. I love that. Thank you for sharing. And then I see Edita says that they need about 45 minutes to get themselves together in the morning. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. And that's true. So yeah, Julia, let's pull our share back up.
So I wanted to jump back to the creating a plan in a group setting, just to give some ideas of how we can set the expectation and create a safe space for students to practice with us, whether it's in studio or online. So I'll give y'all a few moments with this just to write down some of these ideas. And then if anything comes up for you while you're reading this, any additional questions or one-offs, you can put them in the chat. And then we can circle back and talk about this, y'all, because this is all going to continue to tie into the weekend, because this whole weekend is about adaptive sequencing and having tools so that we can meet people where they are in their practice. So absolutely, if there's something that we don't talk about right now in this moment, just write it down. We'll come back to it.
And someone had said in the chat earlier, Julia, I liked this. It was in relation to creating a plan in a group setting. If you're teaching online, you know, putting the link in the email or putting the link in the chat to the playlist that you're suggesting, or maybe that you might be using. I thought that was a good one too. I think a good handful of our teachers do that, is if they have a playlist that they're suggesting, they'll put it in the chat or in the email, that's a really nice way too for everyone to be prepared and ready to go.
Can we scroll back really quickly so that they can see the second question for the journaling?
Yes.
Y'all, I've never found a slide that way, and I feel very fancy for using that technology just now. Just wanted to share that. Very
No,
excited.
that was super impressive. I was like, what is
Thank
going
you.
on right now?
Thank you. You know what? I saw it and I was like, I don't know what this is going to do, but I'm going to lean into this and see what happens. And here we are. Look at that.
So Carlotta put a question in the chat, and it was suggestion for people having disabilities on their arms. I have a client that could not stretch one arm and she lost sensibility on it. Is it good not to compensate the moves on one side of the body or one side of a disabled arm? I want to say it's like, from my perspective, it's going to be different in each situation. What comes up for me is, so I mentioned my sister earlier, the occupational therapist, and a lot of times she'll work with people who have had strokes. And if they're doing like movement-based stuff, if they're at the hospital and she takes them down to the hospital gym, or if they're doing movement in their room, a lot of times she'll have them do strength stuff. So like, let's say maybe left arm doesn't have sensation. Oh, okay, so someone else wrote in here, shaking your body is helpful to help emotion come out. But so in relation, especially like if it's a stroke, and they can, it's not like painful to move their arm, my sister will have them, take the hand that's working, and let's say you interlace it with the left hand, use the right hand to pull the left arm up and over. And so you're building strength in the right arm, but also you're moving the left as well. If they're doing certain postures, like if they're doing work together and the left arm won't lift on its own, maybe she'll help them lift and hold, and have them just like, she'll cue things like, feel the long line of energy across the body. And so even though this arm is being held and supported, they're using their mind, they're using the visualization to bring, just to bring, yeah, Frankie says assisted movement. Frankie, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. Thank you. But like, bring awareness to that arm, even though it's not necessarily, it doesn't have its strength, or it doesn't have the movement at that time, still working it and still moving. So Carlotta, I hope that helps. Michelle also has a situation I remember from years ago. When I first met her, she was teaching in a public studio, in a different studio in town. And she had a student who came in and had, they had just met, and Michelle was like, oh, anything that you're working with, anything you want me to be aware of. And the student had told her, I had a minor stroke and I'm experiencing weakness on the left side. I've been cleared by my doctor. I'm good to go. I'm good to practice, but I just want you to be aware I need some support on the left side in poses like warrior two, triangle, that kind of thing. And so it worked out, really well. So Michelle said, first of all, number one, let's have you set up near the wall. Just to be safe, to have that extra support, let's put you near the wall. And that worked out just fine. And then when they would go into things like warrior two, Michelle would go stand behind her and just help to give her that little bit of support. Obviously, this is pre-COVID time, when you're allowed to go in people's bubble if people give you their permission. But that was what Michelle would do, is, student would open up in warrior and Michelle would just make sure, okay, I'm there, so that they don't fall forward or fall backward. Edita says, how do you feel about dividing class for beginners and advanced, one side of class for beginners, one side of advanced? Okay, so Frankie, I see you addressed that in the chat. Edita, I think you could do that in a different way, not like separating people by any means, but same thing that we talked about earlier when we talked about bus stops. We've done this with, can we briefly turn our share off and I'll do an example. So like, I think I'm in good view.
Thank you for clarifying on this, Tara, because I did not mean that you couldn't have a class for beginners that was specified for beginners and a class for advanced students and do it that way, but beginning a class going, okay, beginners over here, advanced students over here, then it becomes well, okay, I'm not as good as that person. Why are you to judge? What's going on here?
Something that resonates with me in my body, but also this is how I'll try to teach it. And I really love when I go into a class and this is how they do it. It's bus stops. Michaela Powell, she's on our schedule. She teaches in studio and online. She says it a lot. She says, I'm just driving the bus. I'm offering you different bus stops. Take the stop that works best for you. She says something along those lines, and it's like, it's approachable, it's cute. But like, so maybe we're doing, you know, figure 4. We did this earlier in our chair. So maybe you come into figure 4, it's a slight bend in the knees, and you're just holding here. Or maybe you have a chair, you have a wall you're holding onto for support. So this is bus stop number 1. Maybe we go a little bit deeper. We begin to sink the hips back for deeper sensation, bus stop number 2. And so maybe we're holding here and you're just cueing, you know, stay connected with your breath. So maybe someone who's never taken a class before, maybe they stay up here. Or someone that's working on their balance and their focus is in the 4 corners of the right foot. And they're focusing on the energetic connection with the mat. They're focusing on engaging the ankle, engaging all the way up the leg, holding in the lower belly, finding that stability. Or maybe they begin to sink deeper if they're looking for different sensation. Maybe they hinge at the hips and come all the way down. They can have blocks handy underneath the hands to bring the ground closer. Or maybe fingertips touch the earth. So that was what? That was 3 or 4 little bus stops, just small options that you can offer people so they can try. We started at the most, you know, we started at the first one. One's not better than the other, it's just different. Here we're balanced, right? Then move deeper. We can do that with, so, like, you know, chair pose. We're here in our chair. If this is a lot, maybe the hands come to heart center. Or maybe we extend the arms long behind us. Maybe we want to move out of sensation, so maybe our seat is not as deep in chair. So just, you know, giving people options. Maybe you cue for them to get into chair and say, biceps can be up by the ears, arms can be lifted, feel the energetic engagement. Or today, maybe your hands come down to heart center. It can, you know, there's different ways so that you're giving multiple options in a quick span of time, and so that people aren't feeling left out.
Another thing that can be really helpful, y'all, when you're using the bus stop approach is if you are wanting to move toward a more advanced asana, like a balancing pose, like let's say we're talking Vrksasana, like tree. If you have students, you know, you have the option to bring, like we're standing on our left leg. Maybe you bring the sole of your right foot to the left ankle. Maybe you bring it to the left calf. Now, if you are here, feel free to stay out here, maybe close down the eyes, experience what this feels like. If you want to continue to explore, maybe you bring the sole of the foot up to the right thigh. So if we invite students like to go into their inner space, go inward, bring it back onto their mat, like this is where I am in my experience, I'm going to close down my eyes and be here. It brings them back into what it feels like, back into that embodied yoga. So they're not looking around the room going like, oh, well, that person is putting their leg here and that person's foot is pointing up to the high heavens, you know, right? Like, again, just giving the opportunity, like come back to your breath, bring it back to what comes up for you, and just keep bringing them back into their experience. That can be another way to keep them. And sometimes, y'all, I've heard teachers in public classes say it like, find a gentle, loving way to say eyes on your mat. Like your tabletop may look different than your neighbor's. You know, your expression may look different than your neighbor's. That's okay. Everyone's yoga looks different. What does it feel like for you? Can you let it feel good? You know, stuff like that.
Interesting one. Jacqueline says in the chat in regards to tree, I can never keep my foot on my thigh in tree. It slides down on my leggings. I can do it with bare legs. Any suggestions? Okay. And then Saya agrees with Jacqueline. For the life of me, I can't do it if I'm not wearing leggings. I like need the legging. Julia, what do you have to share? I'm excited to see.
So firstly, I feel that. Also like barefoot leggings and barefoot skin on skin. But one thing that can be really helpful if you have a yoga strap or a towel, I'm gonna tilt this up a bit. Here we go. So if you're coming into Vrksasana tree, you know, we can start toes on the earth. If you're here with the sole of the foot on the calf, not on the knee, because we want to keep the joint safe, you can take your strap, you know, activate that right glute because I'm standing on my left leg. And then you can use the strap to bring yourself up. Now, what's interesting about using a strap here is that you're not necessarily like using the strap to pull the leg up. It's almost more challenging because I'm really using my glute and my standing leg, my hip flexors, and my core to hold my leg there without the support of pressing my foot onto my leg. Now I can use my foot, or use my hand rather, as an assist. Woo, jeepers. This is a lot more difficult when I'm not like grounded in breath in my experience. Okay, so now I'm here and now I have the support of the strap to keep myself here. Does that help?
Julia, I think that's really helpful. Absolutely. And then Alicia, I see you have a hand up. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah, I was going to go back to supportive support. When you like, for example, Michelle had that student stand by the wall for support. Is it ever appropriate if the student approves? I asked and the student approves. Do you want me to help lift your arm? Do you want me to put your hand on them to help them move up? Or, I mean, I was curious if that were okay to do that in teaching yoga.
Yes, absolutely. The only thing that's funky is because of COVID right now. I try to stay at my mat during the whole class. But that's exactly what Michelle did. The student said, yes, I would like that support. So imagine being in your warrior two, and then Michelle would have a hand on the back and then just gentle hand under the arm. And it's like light support. It's very nice support so that she's still experiencing the pose. And she has that little bit of support. I think that's absolutely fine. As long as you have permission, that's perfect. And then I saw the comment about the mirrors. So Karen had mentioned how most studios in the US, it seems like, have mirrors. When Michelle was building MVP, we had a conversation around it because the place I'd been practicing at for years had these humongous mirrors. And she was like, no, we're having a studio with no mirrors. We want everyone to draw inward. We don't want to have that. We don't need to have that comparison. And I was like, oh, Michelle, we should have mirrors. We need to have mirrors. Like, I couldn't wrap my brain around having a studio without mirrors. And now that we're in the space, it's so freeing to practice and not have to look at, not that I don't want to look at myself, but to be in the experience and to check in with how do I feel in my body, as opposed to like, oh, I need to adjust this and I need to, my hair's a hot mess. It's me in my practice. And I prefer it that way. Yes.
I want to interject here. How is that accessible for deaf or hard of hearing people? Because I have to keep looking back to see where you are. What are you doing? So I have to do something next. So how is it accessible for people who can't hear? So that's why I think it's important to have mirrors.
A mirror. That's interesting.
Without having to look the opposite way when you start looking this way.
Yes. So what I would say to that is, if your student is deaf or hard of hearing, make sure you are in their line of sight. So like if a student is doing downward dog, I'm not going to be standing at the front of the room when their gaze is at the back of the room saying, okay, downward facing dog. And then they're hanging out there for 5 minutes because they don't, because they don't know that we're moving on to the next pose. If we're going to do something where goddess pose, we're stepping and now we're all looking to the left, or, whatever it is, move into that line of sight so that they know and they can see what's coming next. That's what I would, suggest. But now I understand that's a great reason why mirrors would be helpful. Meredith says, I also teach a deaf student and mirrors are so helpful. Yeah. So if there's no mirrors and it's not accessible in that way, just staying in the line of sight and demonstrating so that they know what's coming next. And then Matt says, another great way to ensure that the hearing impaired person could be placed in the middle of the class so they see both students on other sides. I think that might be a helpful suggestion. Alicia, what do you think?
Well,
it-
it
yeah.
depends on the comfort level. If they're introvert, if they're an extrovert, if they are feeling comfortable being in the middle where everybody is looking, if they're new or if they experience, it just really depends on that person. You can't just say, I think it's best for you to be in the middle. I don't want you, I need a wall. What if that person needs a wall for support? And how are you going to put that in the middle?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to think about different factors. It's not just a simple, clear answer on that kind of thing. So you kind of have to play with it.
Ooh, Karen had a cool suggestion. Maybe the teacher is in the middle and you set up your students to be circled around.
Deaf people
I
like
actually,
because we can see.
yeah,
Because putting them in line, then they're just gonna. I don't know if that person says something or that person says something, but here we can actually see everyone and feel more comfortable. So definitely finding people like circles.
That's awesome. That's really helpful.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Tanya?
Yeah, I was thinking of you, Alicia, when mirrors came up, because I was in the lecture a couple of weeks ago where you had mentioned the mirrors. I guess two things that I have found helpful is when, at least on Zoom or virtual teaching, when the teacher has perpendicular mats. So that you're not always seeing them from their side. Sometimes they turn and face forward where appropriate, if visibility from the front would make more sense than just the side view of what they're doing. So that's been helpful. And also when teachers do mandalas, so that again, you kind of see they're moving from one side of the mat to the other, but each time with a view to kind of staying facing the camera. Either, I don't know, I've always found those interesting and a bit more accessible. I was actually going to make a comment about a benefit for the teacher in thinking about adaptive sequencing. And it goes back to one of the chapters in the manual, actually, where it talks about blocking and creating blocks and kind of intelligent blocks. And I think in thinking through adaptive sequencing, it really forces you to unpack kind of what's the primary movement, what's the secondary movement, where is the sensation? So how can I create and think about variations and how to move into it and out of it and what might come next? I think it forces you to be a bit more rigorous in how you think about your cueing and what you're actually offering. So I think it forces you to be a better teacher in some ways, if you thinking through adaptive sequencing and how to make it accessible.
Absolutely, Tanya. I love that share. And that's where, like, for me, I find the most growth in, like, when students allow me to make it conversational with them. Because we've mentioned this before, everyone has such a different body, such a different experience. And so, like, for me in particular, Julia and I talked about this a little bit yesterday together. I talked about growing up playing tennis, like my whole childhood. And so I would be in that kind of crouched to center, and I'd be, ready to go one way or the other, but everything's so compact. For years, I struggled with tight hamstrings because of being crouched like that for so many years. And so, like, knowing how things feel in my body, or how to adapt different postures just because of like size, creating space for myself. I love when weeks and weeks and weeks ago, I think it might have been the body positive lecture, I think we had a gentleman pop on, and he was like very tall, and he was saying, oh, we're talking about these modifications. I want to share something from my perspective. I'm very tall, and these are things that I need to support myself. I love it because, hey, I'm not a very tall individual. I don't know, I could use these suggestions. And so I love that. And just being open to, adapting and modifying for other body types and shapes and sizes. And just all of it is so important. Thank you for your share.
Kara, you just hit on something so important. And I'm glad you just said that about, we talked earlier about experiencing different types of yoga. Y'all, if some of this is just not landing go through an entire flow without putting your hands on the ground. Like, how would you get into down dog if you couldn't put your hands on the ground? Go through an entire flow without, I don't know, without a chaturanga. Tara, who was your student you had the other day?
So I have a student,
vertigo, yeah,
who comes in regularly, and this one in particular has had it was car accident, couple of wrist surgeries, and this is the same one who had vertigo the other day. So she came in, she joined me for practice, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? How are you? Anything you want to share? And she goes, yeah, I had allergy induced vertigo. I was in bed laying down flat all day yesterday. I was miserable. The room was spinning. And so first of all, I'm like, why are you here with me? Go home. I don't want to trigger your vertigo. And so we were laughing about that a little bit, but we decided, okay, for our whole practice, we're not forward folding. We're going to take it a lot slower, so that we're not doing anything that's like twisting too quickly or like going head below heart. So we decided no downward dog. We decided no chaturanga. And it was such an experience, and we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun doing it, but it was like, we would do, where's my other block? Hang on.
And Tara, while you look for your other block, I'm curious to know, did you still teach a vinyasa class?
Oh yes, absolutely. We both broke a sweat without having, wasn't necessarily breath to movement. It wasn't chaturanga, but we still had a full body experience. So what we did, her and I, we would do a lot of like step to the back of the mat and then rise up, warrior one. And then, we find a drishti focal point, lock your gaze in, and now we're gonna cactus and reach, cactus and reach. And then we would airplane the arms. So usually when we do this, I would say bring your whole torso down. For her, I figure vertigo situation, maybe that's not great. So we're going to bring our arms back behind us, but let's still keep our drishti exactly where it is. So we did a lot of that. And then we did some work where we'd step to the back of the mat, and then we'd step forward, crescent lunge, arms high, slow, open twist. So we did a lot of work with that. And then coming into cool down. So normally we would do, like, let's say it's a seated tree. I don't know if we can see my whole self, but normally we would do something like, okay, lay it all down. And so this day in particular, we had the blocks, and it was inhale, sit up nice and tall. And then as you exhale, begin to just gently hinge forward, but keep the torso upright. And we had our hands on the blocks, and we talked about it, and she's like, I feel stretches in different places. Like, this isn't where I normally feel it. This is really cool. So it ended up being fun, and it ended up being a learning experience. And we still flowed, we still did vinyasa, but we weren't, it wasn't how we would traditionally do it. And it ended up being really beneficial for both of us.
Tara, thank you so much. I'm so excited we got there. I know we talked about sharing that experience, but I'm glad we got to a point where it came up. There was a couple of other really good ideas shared in the chat. Kristen said in her adaptive specific training, they were asked to do Surya Namaskar on one leg all the way through. So yeah, exactly, like to experience and understand amputee sensation. Maybe we can't necessarily experience it directly from their experience, like their embodied experience, but we can imagine by breaking a habit or asking ourselves to do something a little different. Someone else said in the chat, Jacqueline is setting up a flow for someone who can't get on the floor right now. So no chaturanga. So she's thinking more like downward dog to halfway lift on a chair. So see, thinking about some of these things, like break the script a little bit, be disruptive with yourself in your practice, and try to experience yoga through the lens of other people, just so you can bring yoga to more people, make it more accessible, right? Is this resonating? Is this landing with y'all? Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Ginny said, I did this morning's practice in bed. Yes, queen. Tara and I touched base the other morning. She was like, how's your morning going? And I was like, great. I did an entire yin sequence in bed, and like, I feel ready. Like I'm ready to take on the day. Yeah. Love it. Kay also did bed yoga. You know, we just might talk about bed yoga, y'all.
And Jacqueline says, can we do this in our practical? 100% absolutely. So like, yeah, I would say those are some of my favorites to see. Like if I'm the one that's watching them, I love when someone says, hey, I'm trying something a little different, or here are the modifications, here are the adaptations that I'm working with today. One of my favorite things to see is like right off the bat when the teacher's like, okay, I'm going to grab 2 blocks today and here's what we're going to do with them for practice. I think that's just, it's beautiful because you are making it accessible. And if you do something that's, you would consider a little different where it's no chaturangas, I don't see any issue with that. I think that'd be great. Oh my goodness, Erica, I'm just reading, I stepped on a cactus a year ago and didn't do yoga for a few months. Oh, yes, you would have benefited from like some chair or some nice supported, countertop back of the couch so that you could keep the pressure light on your foot. I feel for you. Oh, Julia, can we throw our presentation back up there when you have a moment?
Since we essentially talked through a lot of those journaling prompts and we had our discussion, I went ahead and brought us to the next place with my fancy slide skills. Where are we at? Here we are. Good segue.
This is so creative use of props and adaptive sequencing. Touching base on this again because I feel like this is a recurring theme in so many lectures because it's pertinent for a lot of us. Having stuff available, especially so many of us are practicing at home, maybe you don't have traditional type props, using whatever you can. Alicia says foam roller, yoga ball. I saw that pop up in the chat. Straps, scarves, belts, all of those things. Blocks are the biggest thing for me. And before I had blocks at home with me, I always joke that a Harry Potter book is an excellent substitute for a block, especially when you get in later in the series and they're the thick books. So take the jacket of the book off, make it a little non-slip, but cookbooks, thick books, can be a really nice, like imagine you're in pigeon pose and let's say it's the right side, right leg is forward, left leg is back, nice book right underneath, the right hip to give some support. To me, that's the same level of support as a block. I think that's really nice. And then stools, couch, coffee table, chairs. I have, when we stop the screen share in a little bit, I'll show my little stool that I picked up at TJ Maxx. It's a small step stool. And I use it for a lot of yoga related things. If I'm doing some sort of forward fold, I don't have blocks handy. I'll let my hands rest on the stool, or I'll let my forearms rest on the stool. There's so many good ways that props can be used creatively. So if anyone has anything they want to share in relation to that, you're welcome to put it in the chat or you're welcome to raise a hand. Otherwise, we'll continue on. Oh, Drew, you're welcome to. Oh, and P.S. I see someone in the chat says rolled up mat. That's great. And then Drew, you're welcome to share whenever you're ready.
I just thought it was a really good time to point out it's more of a traditionalist thing, more like Iyengar, I think it was, who would, or one of his students, would take a yellow phone book and then in his postures, from practice to practice, they'd be taking a page out and then taking a page out and then taking a page out until you're basically doing a posture with your hand planted on the floor, say like a Trikonasana. So I just thought like that was a good time to bring that up.
I love that you shared that. That's really fun. That's cool. So just a couple things I wanted to throw in here. So let's say you're getting ready to start incorporating some chair sequences or using a chair in your sequence. Maybe this is something that's new to you. I wanted to put a couple things in here just to touch base on as far as chair safety goes. We want to make sure the chair that we're using to practice is stable and provides a stable foundation for the practice. And so what that means is just, is the chair the proper size for the student? Does the chair provide enough support? And then like, let's say you're on a Zoom call with someone, making sure you can see their whole body. And then looking to see, okay, are their feet flat on the floor, or are they, are their heels floating up? Like maybe the chair is a little too high for them. We touched base on that earlier. If that's the case, okay, you can fold some blankets, you can place a block or a book under each foot. So we want to make sure that the feet are flat to the floor, that the knees are above the ankles, and then if it's needed, is there enough back support in the chair? And also making sure the chair is on a non-slip surface like a yoga mat or a rug before you practice. That's a huge thing, if the chair is on even like sealed concrete or like hardwood floors, it's easy for them to slip. That's why the yoga mat underneath can be so helpful. And then if you're working with a student who uses the aid of a wheelchair, just making sure that the chair is locked. And that the front wheels are facing out at a 45-degree angle so that we minimize the likelihood that that chair is going to move away from us while we're working. All right. Diving a little bit deeper on the chair, a chair can be such a fun and versatile prop. A sturdy chair is a useful aid when someone's working on balance or strength, as well as building stamina, like I mentioned with my sister. Just knowing, hey, I have the chair next to me, I can hold on. If I'm doing forward fold and maybe I get a little lightheaded, or maybe, I don't have the core strength at this time to lift myself all the way back up, I have a sturdy chair right next to me, or I have the back of the sofa, or I have the countertop so that I can help to pull myself back up into the standing posture. So it's a huge tool. It can help provide ease and accessibility in the pose, especially poses that might be intimidating or inaccessible. There's a picture, I believe it was on our Instagram within the last couple months, but we took some photos with Ginger, who teaches one of our chair classes during the week. And Ginger was doing a version of Warrior 3 using the support of the chair. So Ginger's holding onto the back of the chair, and then I believe it's like her left leg is extended long behind her. And so still in that pose, your low belly is engaged. You're balancing on the right foot. You're feeling the 4 points of the foot grounding into the mat, but also your hands are on the back of the chair, so that if all of a sudden, you lose your balance, you begin to wiggle, you begin to tip forward, hey, guess what? The chair is right there to hold, so that's just, a chair can help to build confidence is essentially what it is. And then the next couple slides, we have some walking through, oh darn it, they might be coming a few slides later, but we have like a standing supported chair for sun salutation. But before we get to that, I thought this would be a fun one to do together, and we can, same thing, like unmute or raise hands or put in the chat, sequencing together for chair. So that little, the little graphic it comes right from the manual, and it's, we teach a couple of ways to sequence, and it's the blocks, it's mandala sequencing, it's flow to peak. So I thought it would be a fun one to do this together. So just talking about like what we would put under each bucket or each little heading. So from setting up the breath, warm up, flow to peak, inversions and back bends, abdominal work, cool down, and shavasana. So using a chair as our primary seat for practice, what are some ideas that y'all would suggest or that you've used that are successful for setting up the breath or breath work to do? Oh, and Kristen.
Like a lot of rotations.
Say it again.
Rotations.
How so? Expand a little bit.
Like, okay, so like when you come to center, I always cue for the inhale. And then with the rotation, I always cue an exhale, but there's so many different ways you can rotate.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think for warm up, those gentle rotations are so nice. Julia, can we leave the screen share briefly? And Julia has the graphic on, she has it handy, so you can call the stuff out to us, Julia, but for just a little bit, I'm gonna move back to my chair so we can do some of these together, just so we can have ideas while we're doing it. And we already know this from earlier someone is not a good listener of cues. So have patience with me as we're doing this. Because in my mind, I think I know what I'm doing. Okay. So if we're starting from the top, if you're the teacher, we're beginning to set up the breath. Does anyone, what would you recommend? What's the first thing you'd recommend for me?
Serve the natural breath.
Okay, so just now.
Maybe close your eyes.
Ah, so nice. Okay.
Set an intention.
So my intention is just going to be presence in the sequence. And now we're getting ready to warm up. What's the first thing? What are we going to do to warm up?
Maybe ear to shoulder on the exhale.
What else for warm up?
Maybe arms overhead on the inhale and then exhale, arms come down.
Through heart center?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. What else?
Side bend.
Grabbing onto my little chair. Arm coming up and over. Okay, what's next for warm up?
Twist.
Ah.
Maybe open and closing the hands as fast as you can.
Okay. So like this type of situation?
Yes, yes.
Maybe even adding some of these because this feels nice. Typing all day.
Maybe doing some heart openers.
Cat and cow.
What comes next?
Maybe you could transform your cat cow into some kind of spinal flossing.
Spinal flossing? What? Describe this to me.
I can only demo it on the floor. It's something I do. Hold on, I'm just going to reposition the camera. I don't know if you could interpret it for the chair.
Spotlight and let's spotlight you.
So sometimes I'd start spinal flossing. Sorry, with cat cow. And then I'd inhale to center, and then as I can move into cow, I can never remember which one's which. I send my bum back to my heels, and then I come back up, and that's spinal flossing. No, wrong around. That's it. I can't. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, so I'm gonna try it in the chair. Spinal flossing. Oh, thank you for sharing that. Okay, let me move back to my chair.
So it might look a little bit like spinal waves, Tara, like if we were doing like down dog to high plank. So maybe doing that same movement, but just from the pelvis up. So like, inhale, lift, maybe inhale, lift the gaze, come to cow. And then as you exhale, let the heart melt forward down towards the knees, round the chin to the chest, let the head hang heavy. And then, yeah.
Okay, and that feels great. So that's almost like the opposite of doing the, bring it around town. It's just a different. So now I'm rolling forward, arching the back, and it's like a spinal wave. Yes, I absolutely, that almost like an S shape.
You brought it around town and then you went uptown and downtown.
We did.
Judy Brown.
Tara, try reversing that movement now.
Oh, stop it. Okay, I can. Hang on. I believe that I'm reversing the movement. No.
Like okay, this is gonna sound weird, but think like you're doing the worm in a chair.
From the woman over here that has very limited rhythm. Okay, like
start with your head.
You've seen 2 Men and a Baby.
Like a body roll, like a belly dancer?
maybe tuck your chin into your chest and then lead with the forehead down to flatten out the spine, reaching. Inhale and straighten up. And so it's the reverse. So instead of starting low at the base of the spine to work up, we work at the top of the spine to reach down and out at an angle before sitting back up again.
Okay, so chin to chest, reaching forward. Now lift your head. And
Yeah,
roll
flatten out the spine.
It's
And
kind
then
of like
sit.
it's kind of like a body roll, as they say, but you're going like this and coming up. So you lead with the head and come back up.
You got it.
So I want to check in real quick on something. Let's put a pin in this real quick. So I guess we're still in our warm up and we're going to move to flow to peak. But Tara, I'm curious to know, like, having all of these different cues given to you, but not necessarily knowing what it's supposed to feel like in your body. I'm observing, I'm watching, but I want to ask, how does it feel for you?
Oh, all the spinal stuff for me feels great.
Cool. Okay.
And that's a lot of fun. So let's say, because the first couple things in our warm up were like spine related. We did like our little bit of open twisting, and just, you know, opening side body. My thought for what I'm thinking of for peak pose is potentially, because we've done twisting, we've done spinal mobility, we're warming up that space. Maybe it's chair pose with our hands to heart center. Because so a lot of times, like if I'm sequencing and I'm doing a lot of like twisting and that kind of thing, to me that's like a deeper version of a twist. Like we're moving a little bit deeper. So once we've warmed up, so maybe that's what we're working to today. We did our seated twist, we did our little worm, all our things, our spinal flossing. So Julia, we did setting up the breath. We closed the eyes, we did natural breath. We did our gentle couple of warm-up poses. Now we're flowing to peak, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if I know that we want to have a deep prayer twist as our peak pose in this chair sequence, what are we going to start doing next to get to that place?
So you could forward fold and put one hand on the ground and maybe come out to the side with your other hand and then maybe come up with it if you can in the chair. Does that make sense?
That's beautiful. So I want to make sure I'm doing it correctly. Here's the stool that I referenced earlier, my little TJ Maxx purchase. This thing is solid as a rock, but like, let's say that forward fold's a lot for me. Okay, so now we're forward folding. I have the nice support of my stool. So are you saying one arm down, one arm up?
Yes. Yeah, you got that little twist there.
That is really nice. And I'm compressing the belly against the left leg. We're coming back up through center. And maybe you hold here for a few breaths. We're twisting, we're warming up the body, we're holding for a few breaths. What do we want to do after this?
Even having the arms on the knee on the bottom and then twist up feels really nice.
So like on the knee and twisting up like this?
Like almost like forearm plank, but it's like side forearm plank where you put both of your hands on both of your knee, like your hand on your left knee, your other one on your right knee. And then you go to the opposite side. No, I'm so sorry. Here. Like this and then up rather than forward. If you can't go down as far.
This is me not listening. This is and having okay. Say it one more.
Your left elbow on your left knee, your right hand on your right. So your left elbow on your left knee, sorry. And then your left hand on your right knee, sorry. There you go. And then on your right hand, you twist up if you don't have a stool.
Listen, thank you for explaining and thank you for taking the time to explain, because this is a nice like little support base. Elbow is supported, left knee to left palm to right knee. It's like a nice little bit of leverage, but also stability, and then opening up. Oh, that's really fun. And then other side.
Would it be okay to do a thread the needle right there with that?
Let's see.
Would that work? And then the hand, well, just put the hand in front and on the other knee, in front of the arm.
Okay. So
yeah,
in front
that-
of the arm on the other knee.
Yeah. And then bent gently to open that shoulder.
Because I'm using my left
Yeah.
hand now on the right knee to leverage it just a little
Yeah.
bit. That's really nice. You know why? I'm
Yeah.
coming forward the same way that we're going to when we get to our peak pose. So
Yeah.
I'm forward and it's like, it's doing similar movement, just not as deep yet. We're warming up.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Yeah, I really felt that when I tried it.
Oh, that's really nice. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so then from here, we've twisted in our warm up. We've done these couple of things. And so then for these offerings, I'd say do them a handful of times. Okay. So we're twisting, we're holding, we're taking a few breaths here. And then maybe we come back through center. We move to the opposite side, holding for a few breaths here. And then maybe we break it up again. We'll come back through center and come all the way down forward, releasing the crown, the back of the neck, the low back. And then, okay, we're twisting here. And so maybe you repeat these a couple of times, like one after the other. And we're warming up the body and we're getting ready. And then we're coming back to center. And then perhaps we're seated in our chair pose. Arms can go up. And then exhale, send the arms long behind you, airplane the arms again. My torso is touching the top of my legs, inhaling back through center. And exhale, airplane the arms. And so just getting everything ready, bringing nice movement. And so I'd say going through, like, let's say we go through all that slow and steady, we take some time to get there. I would say at this point, I'm ready to move into my peak pose, hands through heart center, left elbow hooks onto the outside of the right knee. And just gently using the left knee as leverage against, or the left elbow as leverage against the right knee. And just finding a nice twist here, taking a breath or two. And then maybe we break it up. Maybe we come back through center and come back down. And then slowly rise up vertebrae by vertebrae, arms reach. And coming into the opposite side. So Julia, after our peak pose, what are we moving into?
Busted, rearranging our slides. After our peak pose, we're moving towards abdominal work.
Okay, beautiful. So now we've moved towards our peak. We've done all our nice twisting. Everything's nice and warm. What do we want to do for abdominal work?
Sarah, inversions and back bends.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Inversions and
Yeah, inversion and back bends.
Oh, am I missing inversion and back bend?
Yeah.
Okay, so nice little, everything that we did with our cat-cow, nice little back bends. Maybe we want to go a little deeper. We're holding onto our chair, or maybe we're reaching our hands behind us towards the low back, lifting the chest, lifting the chin if it feels okay in the back of the neck, and then just kind of dipping back, almost a variation of like a camel pose. So my heart is open, I'm gently bending my back. And you can take a couple rounds of that if you wanted to. Same thing, if this is a lot, if someone's like, ooh, that's, someone might be like, oh, that feels so great. I feel my throat open up. I'm able to let my crown go heavy. Someone else might say that's a lot on the back of my neck. So maybe for them, we do cow. And gaze doesn't have to be lifted up and back. Maybe gaze is through center, but we're gently lifting the chest, bending into the back. Let's say we're in a chair and we have a sofa table or a stool in front of us. You could also take your forearms, place them on the solid surface, take like a cobra variation. And so you're allowing the heart to gently pull through. You're sending your breath, sending the awareness to the low back. And then come back through center. So that's what I'd say for back bends and inversions. Next, are we at core? We've moved on to core.
Yes.
Okay, what are we doing for core?
We have the repetition marching.
Marching. Low belly is engaged.
Could do seated bicycle kicks.
Oh, Okay, so I'm holding on to my seat. I'm leaning back a little bit, almost like a boat pose variation. Let's grab blocks in case I want some support. Holding onto the side of my chair. Moving back onto my tailbone. I'm supported by my chair. I have my blocks underneath. And then coming up. Ooh, coming up. Bicycle kicks. We could do that. I feel that in the low belly. That's really nice. Okay, anything else for core?
Your point and flex, lift your leg, point, flex, lower.
Maybe trying, like, you know, if you want support of the chair, you have it. You want support of the arms, you have it. Or maybe hands come to heart center.
Aaron
maybe,
said hands behind the head, supported crunches, so feet grounded on the earth, and then supported crunches. So inhale, heart up, exhale, compress, roll in, belly button to spine.
Or side bends. You can also do like obliques, side to side, tip.
Right, and we could either do
Tip.
multiple on
Same side, one side.
back and forth. And then Julia, to your point, also twist and lift. So similar to marching, marching with a twist.
Or reverse crunch where you go down and then use your back to get you up.
Oh, okay. Where are my hands?
Your hands are by your ears. Your elbows are out wide. Go down toward your knees and then use your strong back to pull you back up.
Oh, that's absolutely accurate. I feel that.
You could even just simply be in a seat and lift your legs up off the ground. You can hold yourself up with on the arms of your chair.
Lifting both legs same time?
Yeah. You can have them bended or straight.
What about adding some little flutter kicks, like crisscross the ankles?
Oh, thank you all. Yes. Okay. Let me lean back. Like flutter, 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 or flutter, flutter, flutter. Low belly feels that. That's great.
Ooh.
Oh, my dear, lovely chair client. She's going to just love me next week. We're going to have so much fun with all this core work. This is great. Okay, so moving from core, now we're moving into final cool down. Any suggestions for chair supported Shavasana? Keeping in mind I have a blanket handy, I have my stool, 2 blocks, and 2 bolsters.
Put the bolster under your feet. Go ahead and wrap yourself in your blanket if you'd like. And if you'd like to kick that bolster out just a little bit so your legs are straight, yeah, they don't have to be straight, yeah. And go ahead and relax back. If your neck doesn't feel good, you can get a pillow and put, if you have a pillow or something nearby, yeah, there you go.
Oh yeah, that's a lot. With the block.
Okay,
This is
yeah, there you go. Get your Shavasana, you are set.
So nice Shavasana. Now, how about if I were to say, I don't feel like reclining for Shavasana. I want to do more of almost like a child's pose variation. And I want to come forward, but still be supported by my chair.
I suggest maybe placing the bolster vertically between spread legs, allowing sitting your bum right back.
You know what? We have 2 bolsters.
I don't know what your bolster looks like. Nice. Okay. And quite literally, like I can only do it with pillows, but like that.
Yeah, holding, yeah, hugging it basically, yeah.
Hugging it and allowing your forehead to just kind of rest, nice soft gaze, like.
This is nice. And so coming to the side or forehead down. So this is similar to one that I like to do. And a lot of times we'll do this as like the final Shavasana, and we'll also do guided meditation. That person in particular, she'll come to practice And I'll see her, like, she'll get the camera set up and I'm like, hey, how are you? And she's like, good, as she's dragging like armfuls of pillows over to the side of her chair. And then when it's time to get set up for final Shavasana, that's what we do. It's similar to this. It's stacking the bolsters, stacking blankets, stacking pillow, and then just being supportive and like, you know, allowing everything to release your chest, allowing the belly to go soft, and just be supported by all your props. And it's really nice, especially because I have so many, I don't feel a whole lot of sensation. So like if you're feeling too much sensation in the outer hip or the inner thigh, then just prop yourself up a little more, maybe grab another pillow or stack some towels to take out some sensation. But this feels really nice. Arms can go right underneath also, like you're hugging the pillow. That was awesome. And I mean, we put together a sequence where we themed around maybe spinal mobility, twisting. How do you all feel about that?
Can we do that thing in chair that we did with the block and the upside down crow
Yes.
for abs?
I believe
that.
so.
I don't have my block in here. Like my workspace where I yoga and where I study are two different places.
Let's do it. Let's try.
Tara, while you get set up, there was a question that came through in the chat, and I wanted to touch on it with everyone just in case anyone else had this thought. The question was, I want to make sure I say it correctly. I don't want to, my brain might scramble it. Back bends and inversions are always before abdominal work, right? Or do we sometimes switch them? So this came to me privately in the chat. In my experience, it depends on the student and the practice. It can be helpful in some instances to engage and activate the core before we invert, so we can feel that felt sense of engagement, so that once we're inverted, we can engage those same stabilizing muscles to keep us in the inversion. Like if we're working towards something like handstand or headstand. There are other inversions that are slightly gentler on the frame that still require abdominal engagement, but aren't quite as active for the full body. Tara, do you have any thoughts on that?
So coming from the lens, like let's say I'm putting together something that's a little bit more of a gentle practice. Sometimes I'll do like the back, low back work or back work in the beginning. So maybe we do our gentle warm up and then maybe we come all the way down onto the belly. So, well, real quick, example of the crow in a seat. You could have two blocks. I happen to have the two bolsters. I'm up on the balls of my feet and then my arms are straightened and my knees are coming to the back of the arms. Yes, you absolutely could do your crow variation seated, which is a lot of fun. And your feet, like, it's nice to be able to work with it. Same thing like how Julia did on her back. It's nice to work with this from a seated posture. It's not all the pressure of trying to balance and trying to hold yourself on the mat. But my knee is really nice behind my elbow. I'm straightening. I feel low belly engagement. I think that's a nice option to offer someone. Just depending on your level of ability.
Yeah, and since we're talking about it, you know, one thing that I really enjoy doing in my home study is to go to shapes. This is Yoga Anatomy by Leslie Kaminoff is the book that I'm, you know. So just to show y'all, and of course I opened up to the one page that doesn't have an asana on it. Heavens to Betsy, Julia. Here we go. Perfect. Come on, don't freeze on me now. I said the P word and it froze. Okay, so how well can y'all see this? Let me turn this light off. Come on. So Utkatasana, chair pose, standing, right? What does it look like if we just flip it? What shape is that? What pose is that, y'all? Navasana, boat pose.
Okay, I'm catching what you're saying, but
So that, yeah, we flip it this way. What do we got here? Oh, there's down dog with bent knees. So sometimes thinking about the anatomy of a pose or an asana, and then literally flipping the perspective and thinking about it in that way, like, okay, if I wanted to take someone through Utkatasana, but they were unable to sit like they were going to be sitting in a chair, but I wanted to, encourage this lift of the heart, lengthening of the sacrum, like engagement in the low belly. What would it look like if I literally flipped the perspective of it? So maybe challenge yourself to look through some of the asana, that we have in the 200 or the 300 or the 500 manual, and literally turn the page or flip the PDF a different direction and see what shape you see. Julie says, yeah, it's like wheel is camel is bow. Yeah, they're just variations of the same thing. So keeping in mind, like with that Bakasana or that crow variation, whether it's supine or in a chair, like we can think about all asana in that same lens, it just needs to be flipped and adapted to meet people where they are. So don't let yourself be limited by where you think the center of gravity needs to be in a pose.
Yes, and Julia was speaking. Oh, Julia, would you put the Leslie Kaminoff book in the chat for everyone? The name. I was scrolling back through so many like really great suggestions for the chair. For the chair sequence we put together. I'm going to spotlight my video again just for a moment, and then we'll move on. But I wanted to show an example of like if I'm doing something that's maybe a little more low key, or maybe we want to do something big with the low back later. Okay. So maybe it's the beginning of class, we've warmed up, we do some cat-cow, and then we lower all the way down, planting the forearms into the mat and finding Sphinx pose. So maybe we'll take a few breaths in Sphinx. This is something I've been loving lately. Okay, we want to move a little deeper into sensation, beginning to straighten the arms, coming into seal. The tops of the feet are grounding down into the mat. And then maybe we begin to lower. And then bringing a bend into the elbows, like a 90-degree bend, out to the side, tenting up on both fingertips. And then you can inhale for a wild cobra. So we're moving a little deeper into the back bend. And so while we're here, we're just taking a few breaths. We're bringing our awareness to the low back. Is there a lot of sensation? Do I need to gently move out of it? Or maybe I move a little deeper. And then, nice and grounding. We're on the floor. We're bending one shoulder and then the other, similar to something we did with the chair this morning when we had our legs in goddess base and we were dipping one shoulder and then the other. So this is all low back work. Adding a little shoulder in and then maybe coming back to center. So a lot of times, like if I'm doing something that's slower, or maybe I'm theming it around like more grounding, low to the ground type stuff. And then inhale, lift everything up. You can't see, but my legs are lifted behind me. And then exhale, we'll kick it out. We'll do little flutter kicks like we're swimming. So that's an example where I would do back work at the beginning of class, either because I'm doing something that's a little different or because we're getting ready to do something big in the back. Julia, can we unspotlight myself as I climb out from under my chair? Thank you.
You are free.
Thank you all for being here. Tomorrow is going to be a lot of fun. Lots of actual physical practice. For tomorrow, we're going to do Julia's practice in the morning. It's about a 60-minute practice. And then Molly hops on. Molly Arney does our chair dance yoga offering at MVP. So Molly will hop on. We'll get to hear from her. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And then we're wrapping up the day with case studies tomorrow. So that'll be a really fun, interesting thing to start getting our juices flowing, similar like what we did with me in the chair today. And just, putting together postures, touching base, with our imaginary students or our sample students that we've put together. So I think that's going to be great. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for contributing, for sharing, and just for sharing yourselves and putting yourself out there during this during this day today and being open to the experience. So thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and I hope to see everyone here tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye all.